Figma, the collaborative design application, has been bought by Adobe for a whopping unprecedented $20 billion. This acquisition is rooted in Adobe's age-old strategy of buying out its competition. This could have many implications, namely monopoly, in addition to questionable practices and potential lawsuits. So the important question is, will Adobe harvest its technology and throw its users under the bus, or outright kill it as it did with other software? This Figma deal is nothing new for Adobe, as we just said. Adobe has a rich history of buying its competition. Photoshop, After Effects, Flash, and Freehand are all acquisitions made by Adobe to squash their competition and remain on top of the industry. The first two software were lucky enough to be integrated within the company's suites. Flash was discontinued because it became obsolete. As for Freehand, Adobe integrated its unique and special features into Illustrator, then it was discontinued. Names might change, but the consistent pattern is undeniable. With that information in mind, would it come really as a surprise that Adobe snatched up Figma? If you ask us, not at all. In order for us to truly understand the deal and the whole situation, let's dig a little bit into Figma. On September 27, 2016, Figma was launched to the public. It was all about being able to make interface designs in a collaborative manner on the web. No longer were teams need to toss a file among each other as they go through the design process or scramble to find where the final version is. All of this was solved by having everyone work on the web together. This helped in the design process in so many ways. It helped keep teams in the loop, helped get faster feedback, and resulted in a much more efficient workflow. With Figma's goal to make design accessible to everyone, it eased up the decision-making process, especially companies with many stakeholders. In comparison, Adobe's own version of the UI/UX design application, Adobe XD, was falling into the abyss the more Figma gained popularity. And by 2021, Adobe XD completely fell behind, which is understandable. Where Figma was extremely collaborative, easy to use, and innovative, Adobe was unilateral in nature, bloated, and obsolete. John Friedman, Corporate Vice President of Design and Research at Microsoft Corp, said, "Figma is like air and water for us. Figma has become, I would say, sort of a #1 common tool we use to collaborate across all the design community, in the community, and beyond. It's really great at helping us collaborate at scale and global scale. I can collaborate with teams we have in India, China, Europe, etc." Microsoft using Figma is a huge deal because, well, it's Microsoft, but also the fact that Microsoft and Adobe have had a long-standing relationship which led to tension between the two. But it did not stop there. Figma grew organically more popular in other spaces like Google, Airbnb, and Twitter, most probably thanks to word of mouth from one designer to another. With COVID-19 hitting in 2020, we could only imagine how much of a godsend Figma was to designers who had to work from home. It could very well be a solid factor that played a role in popularizing the app. All of this to say Figma was cutting Adobe XD out of the picture, and boy oh boy did Adobe feel that. Adobe started to lose market share to Figma and had to do what Adobe knew best, which is to use their deep pockets. And in September 15, 2022, Adobe announced that they entered into a definitive merger agreement to acquire Figma, a leading web-first collaborative design platform, for approximately $20 billion in cash and stock. The combination of Adobe and Figma will usher in a new era of collaborative creativity, and thus Figma was Adobe's for $20 billion. Even though the company was valued at $10 billion in its last funding round in 2021, this made us wonder, why did Adobe made such a huge offer? John Naughton, professor of public understanding of technology at the Open University, explains it beautifully in an article for The Guardian. Figma was doing quite nicely and had no need to sell itself, so the offer had to be one nobody can refuse. Adobe bought out Figma to squash its competition, that's for certain, and given their bloody history in this regard, users are fearing the worst for Figma now that it is in Adobe's hands. Jared Spool, an analyst who studies user experience design strategy at Center said about this, There is a lot of concern here that they will harvest Figma for some cool ideas, integrate those into their existing products in a half-assed way, then bury Figma to gain back the subscription they lost when it was free, which is something that has similarly occurred with Freehand. And although an antitrust lawsuit was held against Adobe for that, nothing concrete came out of it, and Freehand was long lost and buried. On a more positive note, this Figma deal is also bringing the same antitrust attention that Freehand had. But this time around, the Department of Justice seems to be aiming for a harder hit than ever before. Justice co-writes in an article, the Department of Justice had been contacting customers and competitors of Adobe and Figma, as well as Figma's venture capital investors in recent weeks. The Department of Justice has already issued civil investigative demands, an unusual move at this early juncture in the probe. The investigation would be the latest in a long line of actions from the DOJ and Federal Trade Commission scrutinizing the market power of the world's largest technology companies, and now they are setting their sights on Adobe, which has a $140 billion valuation and is by far the market leader in digital design tools. Along with the merger review, the DOJ is also expected to probe Adobe's past acquisitions, said two of the people who are not authorized to speak publicly about such a confidential matter. While yes, this is relieving to hear, there is a possibility that this will end in a way that affects Adobe in no way, shape, or form, as there is an argument to be made that Adobe and Figma are not direct competitors, as one focuses on creative tools and the other focuses on collaborative web platforms. On the other end, Adobe and Figma are trying to ease up the tension and negative attention this has brought on with the following statements. Adobe said it will integrate some of the features from its other products, such as illustration, photography, and video technology into Figma's platform. Dylan Field, co-founder and CEO of Figma, also said, "There is a huge opportunity for us to accelerate the growth and innovation of the Figma platform with access to Adobe's technology, expertise, and resources in the creative space. For example, we'll have the opportunity to incorporate their expertise in imaging, photography, illustration, video, 3D, and font technology to the Figma platform. Adobe is deeply committed to keeping Figma operating autonomously, and I will continue to serve as CEO," reporting to David Wadhwani. David is someone I've known for a few years now, and we have a strong relationship of mutual respect. The entire Figma team will report to me. We plan to continue to run Figma the way we have always run Figma, continuing to do what we believe is best for our community, our culture, and our business. Although these statements and viewpoints are rather comforting, they are engineered to calm down the masses of users considering the circumstances and the heat Adobe is receiving. The fact that Adobe owns Figma is still undeniable and has its implications. Adobe has Figma under its wing and will not have to worry about sharing its monopoly with anyone else. This further expands Adobe's monopoly and can lead to more unhealthy practices alongside raising prices, curbing innovation and competition, and what this means for the industry still remains to be seen for certain. But it will be nuts to think every outcome of this is gonna be positive. Sure, seeing that the DOJ and the FTC are going hard on these companies for these questionable acquisitions may lead Adobe to be more careful about what it does with Figma and potential future acquisitions down the line. But it is still worrying that Adobe is still given a wiggle room to buy out all and any product that poses a threat to them, despite being at the top of the industry. I hope you found this video useful and informative. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. You can also let us know what you think in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.